Hello, and welcome back to Podfinder. My name is Philip, and I'm here to talk about Pathfinder 2nd Edition. This is part of a series I'm producing covering the various deities, factions, and NPCs in the Pathfinder role-playing game, and its setting, the world of Golarion. This month here on Podfinder, I'm looking into the esoteric and occult. Plenty of topics in the broader Pathfinder lore are fairly straightforward, at least by fantasy standards, but this month I want to look at those things on Golarion which even accomplished scholars argue about, either because they are so mysterious or because they are so well hidden. Today I'll be looking at one of the most well-recognized but least understood organizations on Golarion, the Esoteric Order of the Palatine Eye. These explorers of the occult operate in the shadows, attempting to unravel the secrets of their long-absent divine progenitor and push back the corrupting forces of chaos. With the release of Divine Mysteries, the Esoteric Order even has some updated mechanical options, including the ability to worship them as a covenant, a type of non-deific pantheon, as well as a custom class archetype available to the Society's members. With all that new information, there's plenty of fresh lore to explore. Also, spoiler alert, this video will spoil background lore and mystery elements for one aspect of the Curse of the Crimson Throne adventure path, as well as some elements of the Carrion Crown adventure path. It will also spoil the overall plot and resolution of the Doomsday Dawn adventure path for the Pathfinder playtest. These spoilers will pop up in the AP involvement section of the video, so I'll reissue the spoiler warnings at that time. Before that, though, if you enjoy this video and want to hear more Pathfinder lore, consider subscribing, or commenting below. Or, if you want to support the channel, check out my Patreon. Just $2 a month gets you access to all my scripts, as well as the audio files for all of my scripted videos, all of which drop at least a week early. With that out of the way, let's move on to the rundown. The Esoteric Order of the Palatine Eye, beyond just being a mouthful to say, is a complicated topic to discuss. It's a secret society, which is equal parts Victorian noblemen's club, religious cult, pyramid scheme, scholars collective, and occult defense league. What's more, all these aspects are woven together in a complex web of secrecy, hidden meanings, and metaphor, deliberately intended to ensure that, in universe at least, the organization remains protected from malevolent outside forces. Even the GM-facing information presented in the sourcebooks struggles to convey the Order's nature and purpose in a clear way. At the very highest level, the Esoteric Order of the Palatine Eye is an organization which brings together scholars, philosophers, religious leaders, and nobles to focus their efforts on sets of shared goals. These goals can be quite diverse, due in large part to the decentralized nature of the organization, ranging from mundane topics like business dealings, governing decisions, and economic policy, to far more esoteric topics like occult archaeology, eldritch mysticism, and personal enlightenment. Membership is highly exclusive, requiring that initiates be able to pay high annual dues, be in good social standing, and have an innate curiosity about the deeper truths of the world. The entire organization is draped in multiple layers of symbolism and iconography, with an extreme preference for symbology relating to ancient Assyrian, like the scarab beetle, the sphinx, or the pyramid, and also for the Church of Pharasma, such as her iconic spiral or the Nosoi psychopomp. The Order is structured into 3 tiers of 3 steps each, for a total of 9 levels of membership. Each level represents a step taken on the path toward personal enlightenment, and climbing the ranks takes a member away from the mundane interests of the Order and closer to the occult truths which it keeps hidden away. In the Age of Lost Omens, the Esoteric Order, and no, I'm not saying the full name every time, is much more well known than you might expect for a supposedly secret society. It's an open secret, for instance, that the Order is a major power player in the nation of Ustalav, and has guided the development of the nation for centuries. While the largely superstitious common folk of Ustalav might never willingly acknowledge the Order as an influential force in their lives, indeed they might even spit on the name of the Order if they ever hear it mentioned in conversation, the signs of the Order are present for all to see throughout the nation. The Order has used its vast hordes of funds to construct libraries, temples, laboratories, medical asylums, and universities all across Ustalav and beyond, and symbols associated with the Order are inscribed onto these facilities. Sphinxes arranged beside doorways, open eyes engraved onto the keystones of arches, or golden chains used to lock doors. To lay people, this symbolism is seen as mere decoration, but to the learned members of the Order, each of these is a visual cue which conveys a message. Within the halls of elite society in Ustalav and the surrounding territories, the presence of the Order is even more of an open secret. Nobles and elected leaders deal with Order members on a daily basis, though whether they could reliably identify them is another matter entirely. Business deals are struck or facilitated by followers of the Palatine Eye with regularity, and the governance and protection of Ustalav as a nation would be impossible without their involvement. Much as the common folk might fear and despise them, the Order is commonly credited with the overthrow of the draconic warlord Kazavon. It also played a substantial role in the later ousting of monarchic rule from Ustalav's 3 northern counties, now called the Palatinates. These regions have since become centers of alchemical and scientific learning renowned across the world. Of course, the layers of obvious secrecy in which the Order cloaks itself invite substantial fearful speculation, and many a conspiracy theorist exists in Avestan who questions and decries the Palatine Eye as a force for evil. Many warn that the Order is meddling in affairs which ought not be disturbed, and calling upon dark powers which they cannot control. Others claim that the followers of the Eye are necromancers, or cultists devoted to demonic forces, offering up sacrifices to conjure evil gods and bring about the destruction of the world. And, to be perfectly clear, they aren't entirely off base. Within the smoking rooms and lecture halls which the Order calls home, behind hidden doorways and false walls, the members of the Order are certainly dealing with mysterious powers. Seances with departed spirits are a common practice among gathered members of the Order, as are examinations of mummies extracted from far-off Osirian. Dissection of cadavers is common enough, as is alchemical and eldritch experimentation. Though the Order is, in truth, an organization dedicated to law, it holds no reverence for the moral sides of good or evil. Devils and archons are equally useful to followers of the Eye, and the iconography of both can be found among the Order's many sacred rituals. While many cells within the Order are devoted to the protection of the innocent or the uninitiated, just as many see themselves as the rightful rulers of those too weak or ignorant to defend themselves against the horrors of the world. To better understand the specific teachings of the Order and the goals its members are trying to achieve, we need to step back. The history of the Esoteric Order is one wreathed in conspiracy, so let's travel back in time and discuss the esoteric origins of the Palatine Eye. In the year 3985 AR, more than 7 centuries ago in universe at time of writing, the gentleman explorer Aldus Aldon Cantor, Count of Violent, made his way into the Osiriani desert in an attempt to plunder an ancient tomb. He was lost in the sands, and many counted him dead, cursed for having stolen treasures from the pharaohs of old. Aldus, however, did not die among the dunes. After a terrible sandstorm, the young nobleman stumbled across a curious sight. A sepulchre made from stone, revealed by the shifting of the dunes. Entering the structure, Aldus made contact with an order of sages, immortal scholars who heeded the wisdom of some ancient being. Aldus took it upon himself to discover more, and soon met with this strange creature, which turned out to be an angel, withered from the desert heat and misshapen by some arduous fate. The angel called itself Tabris, and it bore scrolls upon which were written the secrets of the universe. For 3 years, Aldus Cantor remained within the sepulchre, learning the language of the sages and transcribing the notes of the angel Tabris. When he finally emerged from the desert in 3988 AR, he was a changed man. He claimed to be the appointed messenger of Tabris and his sages, and bore a collection of scrolls which he would add to and edit over the following years. This collected text would eventually become known as the Lost Gospels of Tabris. Returning to Ustalav, Aldus began attracting followers. He claimed that the Lost Gospels outlined a path toward divine self-improvement, preparing the soul for an eventual communion with divinity upon death. Aldus's force of personality proved attractive to many young noblemen in Ustalav. Their lives of luxury left them wanting for meaning and intrigue, and the mad esoteric ramblings of Aldus proved an excellent outlet for their restlessness and curiosity. The ideas which Aldus espoused were cloaked in mystery, making heavy use of Osiriani symbolism, which was extremely fashionable at the time. They also involved the teachings of Pharasma, a deity who was extremely important to Ustalavic society due to the ever-present threat of the undead, and to the occult practices of the Varisians, one of the major ethnic groups in the nation. These ideas, which individually would have been extremely familiar to the Ustalavic nobility, had never been combined in such a way before, making Aldus's message all the more attractive. Aldus capitalized on this increasing popularity by founding an early version of the Order. He established formal ranks among his followers, carefully parsing out knowledge to followers based on both their level of devotion and understanding, and based on the amount of money they could contribute to his new organization. Despite these obvious red flags, membership in the Order continued to grow until 3999, when rumors of corruption and debauchery among members took root among the general population of Ustalav. A mob of angry citizens stormed an Order gathering site, interrupting an unspecified eldritch rite, and scattering the members to the wind. Membership declined after this, especially after rumors circulated that Aldus had been attempting to conjure and sacrifice some sort of celestial being before the mob had stopped him. Aldus's sanity and stability similarly declined after this event, and he became increasingly introspective and reclusive in the years which followed. He became consumed by the Lost Gospels, endlessly translating and retranslating his work in a mad quest to produce the most complete and perfect version of his text. This continued for nearly 30 years, until 4028, when he finally disappeared under mysterious circumstances. The Order might have died then and there had it not been for his most learned and loyal disciples. In an event now known as the Elect of Nine, these apostles took over management of the organization. They reorganized their followers and restructured the means of recruitment, allowing for a much broader pool of potential applicants. They also gained complete control of the Lost Gospels of Tabris, freeing them from Aldus's endless cycle of revision and correction. This was when the Esoteric Order of the Palatine Eye, as it exists today, was truly born. As an early sign of their new leadership, the Nine began the tradition of funding libraries, temples, and asylums across Ustalav, tapping into the vast collection of funds which Aldus had assembled. This new mask of benevolence and charity served as an effective facelift for the Order, and interest among the nobility grew once again. Beliefs of the Order. The Esoteric Order of the Palatine Eye follows the teachings outlined in Aldus Cantor's seminal text, The Lost Gospels of Tabris. This collection of scrolls, which are imbued with tremendous divine and occult power to the point that they now function as a major artifact entirely on their own, have formed the basis of the Order's beliefs and practices since the Elect of Nine stabilized the text, in the absence of Aldus's ongoing editing, redlining, and translating. The highest-ranking members of the Order can access the original text only after passing through numerous layers of security. Even then, the Gospels are written entirely in secret code, with the whole of the text encoded beneath layers of Osiriani mysticism, Pharasman teachings, and Varisian occult practices. To decode the text is an incredible undertaking, and only the most learned sages within the Order can even begin to attempt it. Of course, the lessons of the Order are not limited to the Lost Gospels themselves. Portions of the Gospel text have been copied into derivative works. These lesser codexes contain not only portions of the Lost Gospels, but also notes, commentary, theories, and interpretations codified and verified by the Order over the centuries. Examples of such commentaries include the Cromlech Catechisms and Issachar's Mysteries of the Order, both of which expound upon the teachings of the Gospels in detail. These volumes are available to substantially more Order members, though the more of Aldus's original text they contain, the more restricted they are. Even these lesser works are carefully protected and secured. Each is separately encoded, requiring careful work to even access the underlying lessons. I suspect that the act of decoding these piecemeal texts eventually prepares a member to decode the Gospels themselves, but that is speculation. Beyond encryption, however, the derived works are also protected by magic, including spells which obscure the text itself, and spells which act as traps to either destroy the text or attack the reader. Many of these spells could be bypassed by presenting the correct key, oftentimes a magic item which the Order created for the purpose. Many of these take the form of scarab beetle charms. From the Lost Gospels of Tabris and these derived works, the followers of the Palatine Eye have created the many mysterious rituals, recitations, and other occult practices which define membership in the Order. But all of this begs the question, who is, or at least who was, Tabris? Tabris is actually a character who's been detailed elsewhere in the Pathfinder lore. Tabris, sometimes called the Chronicler, was once an angel in the service of heaven. He was an accomplished scholar, and the leaders of heaven tasked him with recording the planes of the multiverse and all who dwelt within them. He began by studying the celestial planes, heaven, nirvana, and Elysium, as well as the lesser planes associated with those three. This information was detailed in a tome called the Chronicles of the Righteous. Next, Tabris examined the morally neutral planes, Axis, the Boneyard, and the Maelstrom. This information, though slightly more complex, was successfully collated into the tome The Concordance of Rivals. Finally, Tabris undertook his most dangerous and challenging assignment, the cataloging of the forces of evil. He traveled to Hell, Abaddon, and the Outer Rifts, recording every disturbing detail of what he had seen and who he had encountered. This he recorded into a single vile text, the Book of the Damned. So powerful and wicked was this work, however, that the book developed its own internal demiplane, where all the information and evidence proving the truth of Tabris's account is recited by the voice of the damned, a bound fiend of unknown origin. At the deepest level of the demiplane, and on the final page of the book, exists the unspeakable Word, a magical entity which collects all the evil in the multiverse and copies it into the book. Tabris included this final source of wickedness to ensure that the Book of the Damned would never stop being written, to further ensure that all the evils in creation could be properly catalogued and studied. Upon witnessing this final accomplishment, the rulers of heaven saw Tabris in a new light. He had become warped and twisted by the evils he had come to understand, and the forces of good could now only look upon him with horror. The rulers of heaven cast Tabris out and ordered the destruction of the Book of the Damned. The book, though, was removed from heaven's great library and vanished. It has since reappeared in bits and fragments on the material plane, with at least 3 copies having been partially assembled on Golarion, one in Vudra called the Gantigani Folio, one in Osirian called the Plaques of the Black Sun, and one in Avestan called the Vessex Text, which was collected under the rule of the Whispering Tyrant before the Shining Crusade. Fun fact, the 3 books of Tabris, the Chronicles of the Righteous, the Concordance of Rivals, and the Book of the Damned, all exist as first edition sourcebooks which you can acquire. They detail the mechanics of the Outer Planes, and stat out the many demigods who inhabit them, from the Imperial Lords to the Archdevils and Daemon Harbingers. It should go without saying, of course, that the in-universe versions of these books are substantially larger and more detailed, likely because Tabris didn't need to make a profit by selling these to nerds for $29.99 plus shipping. So this is the Tabris whom Aldus Cantor claimed to have encountered in the Osiriani Desert, an exiled angelic scholar who was cast out of heaven for having chronicled the evils of the universe. According to the followers of the Palatine Eye, Tabris had penned a final chapter, an epilogue to his 3 great works. This final work contained the sacred knowledge required to contextualize and understand the evils of the Book of the Damned, without being corrupted. According to some branches of Palatine tradition, Aldus's great task was to unify this final chapter with the Book of the Damned, at which point the evils in the text would be purged. If Aldus was charged with such a mission, however, he never succeeded in accomplishing it. Instead, he began the long and arduous task of deciphering the hidden knowledge which Tabris passed along. Separated from the Book of the Damned, these hidden truths outlined a path toward self-perfection and heightened understanding. Aldus, however, eventually became convinced that even deeper truths were hidden within the text. In his waning years, he decided that the lost Gospels could be used to facilitate the resurgence of some ancient deific being of unknown origin. Since Aldus's disappearance, however, this line of thought has been purged from the Order's beliefs and practices. The core interpretation of the Lost Gospels nowadays can be boiled down to the belief in an internal spark of divinity, which practitioners can cultivate and grow within themselves by living an ordered life and following a strict path toward eventual enlightenment. The Gospels teach that each mortal humanoid contains within them a spark of divinity, a remnant of the divine which was used to bring about all of creation. This spark can be deliberately nurtured and built upon through careful study and practice. These cultivation tactics follow the 9 steps of ascendancy, a path said to mirror the hierarchy among the angels of heaven. Each of these 9 steps represents a rank which adherents to the Order's teachings can achieve, ranks which are called stations. As members ascend from one station to the next, they gain greater levels of hidden knowledge, with increasing levels of access to the original text of the Lost Gospels themselves. That said, higher stations also lead to higher expectations placed upon members. Those who ascend to the next station are expected to demonstrate higher levels of personal understanding and enlightenment, and, of course, are expected to make higher financial contributions to the Order. For many, this increasing financial burden is a limiting factor in how high they can ascend, but others believe that the knowledge and influence that they will gain through ascension will open the door to increasing prosperity, making their increased contributions both feasible and appropriate. The goal of the 9 steps of ascendancy is to prepare the soul of the practitioner for their eventual death. Upon death, the Gospels teach that a sufficiently prepared follower will encounter some form of divine apotheosis. Their divine spark will pull their soul out of the cycle of the River of Souls, and will merge them with the great primordial divinity which exists outside of the gods. Interestingly, the role the gods and the River of Souls play in this philosophy is unclear. Additionally, no other major faiths on Golarion reference this primordial deity, at least not by this name or in a way which is obvious. The ordered life which the Gospels preach is conveyed through a series of allegorical fables. These generally revolve around the themes of ascension, and often tell stories of mortal beings becoming deities, or angels increasing in divine power. Another common thread is the idea of creating and maintaining order in a universe of chaos. This emphasis on order over the idea of morality is reflected in the Gospel's use of both heavenly and hellish imagery and lessons. At the same time, these lessons are coded in layer upon layer of symbolism, which must be decoded through the practices of the Order, which build upon themselves from one station to the next, allowing for new and deeper levels of understanding from the same fables as a member ascends in understanding. These two factors, the use of diabolic imagery alongside angelic ideas, and the layers of mystery and allegory, are, of course, significant contributors to the idea among the common folk that the Order is a malevolent conspiracy. And, to be entirely fair, this is an image which the members of the Order have cultivated and used to their benefit, even those who are entirely benevolent and good-natured. Additional practices of the Order. So, now we need to answer the question of how one becomes a member of the Esoteric Order of the Palatine Eye. One cannot simply become a follower of the Eye, as membership in the Order is strictly controlled and by invitation only. Existing members can present invitations to prospective new members only after those invitees have been vetted by the broader organization. This vetting process has multiple aspects. The first of these is social. The Order is, in many ways, a social club, which allows members to share influence and power. And perception of the order as a whole, as well as perception of its members, is deeply important. Prospective members must be in good social standing in their community, with no significant skeletons in their closet relating to past crimes or social faux pas or scandals. The second aspect is magical. Prospective members must show some level of interest in the arcane, occult, or divine arts, or at least some willingness to discuss them on an academic level. The third aspect is financial. Prospective members must be willing to pay the expensive dues which the organization requires. The fourth major aspect is subservience to the order. New members should be willing to bend the knee to the hierarchy of the order, as well as their procedures, teachings, traditions, and ceremonies. Of course, there's also an element of what I can only describe as vibes in these assessments as well, and there is certainly some degree of personal affection or distaste involved in deciding whether a particular prospective member is approved for an invitation. Notably, priests and other members of Pharasma's clergy are subject to much less scrutiny. This is likely due to the importance of Pharasma's teachings to the order's beliefs, but might also have a more pragmatic element. In Ustalav, where the order is largely based, the order fiercely opposes the Whispering Way, the infamous necromantic cult. Pharasman priests might receive special treatment for no other reason than the order's need for their magical prowess and expertise in fighting the undead. Once a new member has accepted their invitation, they become an acolyte, a lesser position within the order with no major benefits, but which still requires them to pay dues. This acolyte period, which lasts for 3 years, is meant to symbolize Aldus Cantor's own 3 years of isolation in the Osiriani desert, during which he recorded Tabris's teachings. The acolyte spends these years learning the various codes used in low-level order communications, as well as the ancestral language of the Sphinxes, the working language of many of the order's formal proceedings. Once this initiation period ends, the acolyte is finally inducted as a full member, in a bizarre and intricate initiation ritual, one which has been graciously detailed by Paizo. The induction is overseen by 2 key figures, a senior master of the local branch of the order, and the mummified corpse of a previous high-ranking member of the order. After going through a scripted exchange of phrases, the inductee is blindfolded and led into a separate chamber. Here, the master uses magic to project a voice from the mummified corpse, inviting the inductee to ask 3 questions, which the corpse will answer with a whisper. The first 2 questions are presumably scripted, though we don't know what they are. The third question, however, is always the inductee asking for their new name. The master, through the mouth of the puppeteered corpse, then bestows a new name upon the member. These names are always inspired by Osiriani naming conventions, which is a nice way of saying that the order just makes up something which sounds vaguely Osiriani. Seriously, one of the sourcebooks for this specifically uses the phrase, quote, an extravagant society name of dubious ancient Osirian origin, unquote. These names seem to be used exclusively internally, since members still use their public-facing name when interacting with one another outside of official order meetings. Once this name is given, the jawbone of the corpse used in the ceremony is broken, and the whole corpse is cremated. The new member then receives their robes of office, attaining the rank of Most Worthy Angelic Prince, the first and lowest station of the order. Full members in the order meet on Oath Day, or Thursday, evening, at their local meeting house, which is often... These formal weekly meetings are extremely elaborate, with levels of pomp and circumstance intended to mystify and confuse new members, as well as the rare visitor or invited guest. Every piece of order business, from the collection of dues and the reading of minutes to the reception of news from other cathedrals, is steeped in layer upon layer of ritual, involving recitations of sacred phrases, call and response style hymns, and the handling of intricate artifacts. Order members are expected to attend each weekly meeting in their formal raiment, meaning the gathered assembly can look downright gaudy and ridiculous, at least to those who don't buy into the air of mysticism and tradition. All this together gives even the mundane activities a distinctly cultish feeling, and induces a sense of alienation in non-members who catch a glimpse of them. After the regularly scheduled activities, attendees are typically invited to view some sort of demonstration or formal presentation, which varies from week to week. These might include lectures from members who are experts in a field relevant to the Order's interests, typically history, archaeology, the physical sciences, alchemy, occultism, religion, or the Eldritch Mysteries. Other presentations might be more lively, such as alchemical or scientific experimentation performed on stage, medical dissection or surgery performed live, or the unveiling and unwrapping of a recently collected Osiriani mummy. After these formal presentations, the rest of the evening is dedicated to socialization, and it is during this time that most Order members begin to reap the benefits of their membership. These social hours present opportunities to make backroom deals or secret alliances, most of which can prove extremely profitable in the material world. Trading favors is a foundational practice of the Order, and just as important as any occult study. Other topics of discussion can include local gossip, the planning of new excursions into Osirian, planning responses to the aggression of Tar-Baphon, or even just simple small talk among trusted friends. Only members in especially high standing use this free time to discuss the more occult aspects of the Order, though these topics are more often reserved for even more exclusive and private events. Outside of regular meetings, Order members are welcome to gather at their cathedral throughout the rest of the week, as many of them host a variety of other exclusive activities. Most cathedrals have some type of drinking establishment or smoking room attached, with a fine selection of potent potables and intoxicating inhalants. Many cathedrals also contain vast libraries well suited to study, and therefore host more than a few study groups which meet regularly. Interestingly, the sources note that seances in particular are a favorite pastime among Order members. I assume that actual seances which involve real magic are practiced among elite members of the Order. At the same time, I wouldn't be at all surprised if theatrical, false seances were practiced by lower-ranking members purely for entertainment. Also, Order members are required to attend regular worship services at Pharasman temples, and so likely interact there as well, albeit in their public-facing personas. At the highest level of Order membership, elite members meet in secret to discuss the eldritch secrets of the lost Gospels of Tabris, and work on purifying their souls for their eventual divine ascension upon death. These are the members who pore over ancient texts, who explore hidden temples, who gather lost relics, and who keep their eyes and ears open for threats to the ordered nature of the world, be they from Tar-Baphon, the mummies of ancient Osirian, or the black spaces between the stars. Speaking of ranks within the Order, membership within the Order is divided into 9 stations, which are grouped into 3 sets of 3 called thrones. The third throne is the lowest, and most members belong to the 3 stations contained beneath it. These are the members who treat the Order more like a social club than an occult organization. The second and first thrones are substantially more exclusive, and these thrones contain the elite members I spoke of, who spend much more time and energy on the esoteric secrets of the Order. Some of the stations under the second and first thrones are limited to a set number of members, though it's not entirely clear where this cutoff is set. Like I mentioned earlier, higher ranks within the Order demand higher levels of financial support from members. Geographic organization among the Order is largely dispersed, with members falling under the sway of their local cathedral. Each cathedral is presided over by a council of senior members, and these councils are largely autonomous, though the hierarchical nature of the organization and the occasional cooperation between cathedrals implies a level of superstructure in the Order which hasn't been detailed in the lore. Presumably, the ranking members of each major cathedral meet with one another in times of trouble, to coordinate their non-local operations, resolve disputes, and share research materials. The relative independence of the cathedrals leads to members of each developing their own distinct worldviews. In Caliphas, for instance, the Order is highly reflective of the city's class structure, with membership largely consisting of local nobles, who spend their time and influence extracting greater power and wealth from the region. The Lepidstadt Order, however, is far more based. Members here are focused on the breaking down of class boundaries, and they seek to eliminate income and wealth inequality. They still focus on giving special treatment to those who display exceptional intellectual prowess, but this cathedral helped to usher in democratic governance to the northern counties of Ustalav, which are now called the Palatinates. Near the border with Numeria, in the town of Vish, the Order's local cathedral specializes in the hiding and protection of spellcasters, especially those whose powers appear particularly terrifying. The peoples of Ustalav are a superstitious lot, and the Order's protection here has saved the life of many a spellcaster. On the rare occasions when a member of the Order betrays their vows of secrecy, or otherwise abandons the teachings of the Lost Gospels, punishment is swift. The offending member is stripped of all their membership benefits, including any deals from which they were benefiting with other Order members. While this might sound like a light punishment, traitors to the Order are extremely rare. They have a tendency to vanish soon after their expulsion. Often, no trace of them is ever found. Sayings and Symbology. Unsurprisingly, the Esoteric Order of the Palatine Eye uses a variety of signs, phrases, and symbols. Their regalia and traditions are littered with a patchwork of ideas tracing back to ancient Assyrian and Pharasman lore, as well as hundreds of other minor sources. A number of symbols might be worn by Order members outside of official meetings, or might be used discreetly in homes or places of business to delineate specific ideas to those in the know. The most obvious of these symbols is the Palatine Eye, an open eye emblazoned on the back of a scarab beetle. This sign has many parallels to the idea of an all-seeing eye, and represents the ability to see through the shadow of ignorance with the light of knowledge. If the eye is closed, the sign can instead represent ignorance, naivete, or secrets which remain unknown, or, in some cases, even death. The apostolic tome is the sign of a book which is decaying and falling apart. This book is a reference to the Lost Gospels of Tabris, the founding document about which all the Order's teachings revolve. When the tome is shown closed, it represents concealed knowledge which has been locked away, and when it is shown open, it represents collaboration and shared wisdom. The rotting of the book is intended to reflect decay, both the decay of the soul, if it is not properly tended, and the decay of secrecy and security, as no secret can be kept forever. Contrasting this is the withered hand, a symbol of a wrinkled hand, like that of a mummy or otherwise desiccated corpse. This symbol broadly denotes the idea that the Order's secrets must be kept even unto death. However, far more specific meanings can be conveyed by depicting the symbol with the fingers arrayed into a variety of shapes. The number of fingers extended from the palm, for instance, can communicate specific messages, but these are extremely situational, intended to be understood only by particular recipients. The chained door, representing the doorways which grant access to the Order's cathedrals, which I'll discuss in a moment, is another common symbol, one which is typically placed in reference to locations, rather than worn on one's person. When the doors are shown open, typically with blinding light behind them, they represent an invitation to come and seek the powerful knowledge within whatever structure the symbol is near. When the doors are shown closed and chained, they represent a place which is unwelcoming of inquisitive minds, either because Order members aren't allowed in, or because the Order member who sees the symbol hasn't been granted access to the facility in question and the secrets hidden within. Similarly, the sepulchre is a symbol used to denote locations of treasured lore, like libraries. An intact sepulchre represents areas friendly to the Order and its agents, while a ruined sepulchre represents a site which is either unsafe due to its current occupants, or which has been rendered unuseful as a source of information. Beyond these symbols, followers of the Order learn a variety of secret phrases, mostly based on ancient Osiriani or some variation thereof. While many of these phrases are entirely ceremonial, several are used as mnemonic devices to aid in memorization, meditation, and self-reflection. These might be uttered by members of the Order as they undergo their daily spell preparations, or as they undertake stressful or dangerous tasks. They could also be used between members, as a sort of first-pass code to identify one another in public. The first of these phrases is Absek Abet Sahu, or once mine, always yours, which glorifies the sharing of knowledge among Order members. No individual's memory is perfect, and no one will live forever, so the sharing of knowledge ensures that it is preserved. Het aru mut, or favored is brevity, is intended to be practical in advising practitioners to keep their ideas and discussions concise and focused, advice which I myself really need to start taking with these scripts. The phrase also relates to an idea which I will explore in a few minutes, relating to how the Order sees itself as one step ahead of the common folk in society. Seek and you shall find, or Chu ba Hatef, reminds members of the Order's overarching and endless quest for more knowledge and understanding. At the same time, it reminds followers that their fellows can aid them. In seeking help from other members, those in need will find the support which they require. The most mnemonic of the phrases, Nib imnet hemma, translates to remember what is learned. This phrase reminds practitioners that all knowledge, no matter how small, is valuable in and of itself. Even small factoids might unlock further secrets at some later date, so no information should ever be discarded as unimportant. Finally, Sek Akmet Thulchof, or Secrets Kept Remain Mine, is a reminder to all Order members of their vows of secrecy. This phrase is used to conclude all formal meetings at cathedrals, and is likely regularly used to conclude any other business conducted between Order members. Facilities of the Order. The Esoteric Order of the Palatine Eye operates out of formal meeting halls called cathedrals. This term cathedral evokes sprawling religious structures, but in truth, these buildings do not have to be religious sites, and in most cases, at least in recent years, are not. Historically, the Order attempted to meet in Pharasman churches, in which case the name cathedral was literal. As the Order grew, however, and as it became less able to openly associate with the Pharasman church, followers of the Palatine Eye were forced into other structures. These included basements and ruins, but also private buildings owned by Order members. These private buildings often had the facade of other businesses, like libraries, playhouses, or bars and restaurants. In cases where the Order is able to construct or modify a building to their own standards, they will tend toward a very specific design. Entrances will be flanked by Sphinx statues, and exterior doors will be locked with chains, which are often made of gold. The space will be centered about a large meeting chamber called the Grand Congregation. The layout of the Grand Congregation is dominated by a raised bench, just like in a courtroom, and rows of benches or pews are arranged to face these raised seats. The decor of this chamber, and of the cathedral as a whole, is striking. Osirian-related imagery of dubious legitimacy is prominent throughout most cathedrals, and is mixed with Pharasman spirals, psychopomp masks, and Varisian folk imagery. Preserved animal corpses dot the walls and floors, some of which are simple hunting trophies or scientific models, but others of which are the bodies of familiars of deceased Order members. The walls of these rooms are often wood-paneled, bringing to mind the idea of wealthy smoking lounges, and giving the whole structure a cavernous, dark, and muted atmosphere. Two features of note are especially prominent in the Grand Congregation, and might draw the attention of newcomers. First, behind the high bench, a large clock is displayed. The time on this clock is always set 1 hour ahead of the actual time of day. This clock serves a dual purpose. It primarily reminds members of the inexorable progress of time, and the need to continue moving forward. The offset time, meanwhile, represents the mindset of Order members. In their knowledge and mastery of the occult, they are always one step ahead of those outside of their organization. The second most notable feature in the Grand Congregation is the stations above and below, a series of 18 mosaics arranged in 2 groups of 9 throughout the chamber. The stations above are arranged on the walls at eye level or above, and depict a man ascending from a commoner to an angelic being, as he grows in knowledge and understanding. This is intended to evoke the idea of the Order's 9 stations, the 9 ranks through which a member can ascend. The stations below, by contrast, are arranged on the floor of the chamber, and depict that same angelic figure as he strays from his divine path, and is steadily reduced in stature, until he once again becomes little more than a simple commoner. These images are intended to remind Order members that no one is immune to corruption and the loss of standing, and that the path the Order follows is a narrow one which can be lost and forgotten if a member is not vigilant. When members of the Order gather for weekly meetings, they approach the main entrance of their local cathedral. There, they are greeted by an Order member who has remained within the structure since the last meeting, a period referred to as a wake. This Order member greets the attendees with the phrase, "Who seeks knowledge in this sepulchre?" at which point he grants them access to the interior. The meeting then begins in the Grand Congregation, under the management of the 9 senior members of the Order belonging to that cathedral. They preside over the meeting from the high bench, with the large clock behind them and the Order members seated on the benches before them. We as a community also have a little more information on several specific Order cathedrals. In the Ustalavic capital of Caliphas, the Order is based out of the Hereday Theatre, a former playhouse and music hall which the Order has purchased and converted for its own purposes. The Hereday Theatre contains a fairly large library, containing much of the Order's gathered lore. Notably, a map for the Hereday Theatre is available in Book 5 of the Carrion Crown Adventure Path. To the north, in Violent, the Order operates out of the county's official administrative building. This domed structure once served as the seat of power for the Counts of Violent, including the former Count Aldus Cantor himself. Though Violent is no longer ruled by counts, the Order exerted its influence to ensure that the new democratic government maintained the building as their own seat of power. This allowed the Order to continue to use the cathedral beneath the structure, called the Ventriloquist's Pulpit, one of the oldest which is still functional. This particular cathedral was built to Aldus Cantor's own specifications, and features numerous hidden chambers, false floors, and false walls. Far to the south, in Sothis, the capital of Assyrian, an extremely secretive sect of Order members meets in the Necropolis of the Faithful. This is squirreled away in the large catacomb complex surrounding the High Temple of Pharasma. This particular section of catacombs contains the bodies of many of the founding members of the Order. Supposedly, the Order members of this cathedral managed to draw some mysterious divine power from the catacombs themselves, though this has never been detailed or further explored. Famously, the city of Lepidstadt in northern Ustalav is supposedly constructed according to the principles of the Order. The entire layout of the city was designed, or strongly influenced, by followers of the Palatine Eye. This isn't entirely surprising, given that, even today, members of the Order hold major political offices in the city. Was Aldus a fraud? Now, before we wrap up the lore section, we need to ask the million-dollar question. Did Aldus Cantor just make this whole thing up? This question has probably been nagging at you throughout this entire video. Lord knows it was nagging at me the whole time I was writing this script. In-universe, there are those who know enough of the Order's secrets to question Aldus Cantor's motives in forming the Esoteric Order of the Palatine Eye. According to Aldus's own claims, the angel Tabris charged him with spreading the teachings of the Lost Gospels to the world to enlighten the worthy. And yet, when he returned to Ustalav, he didn't found a religion. He founded a secret society, one which he filled with the elites of his own society. He collected extravagant dues from his followers, drastically limiting the spread of his message. But does that mean that there was no truth to his message, or was he just a flawed messenger? Similarly, if we take a step back from the specifics of Aldus's teachings, we see an interesting picture. If Aldus wanted to craft a cult which specifically appealed to the elites of his native Ustalav, he couldn't have chosen better imagery than that which he landed on for the Order. Ancient Osirian was already fashionable and exciting at the time of the Order's founding, as demonstrated by Aldus's own quest into the desert. The Pharasman faith would have been well known to the Ustalavic nobility for the strength it provided against the relentless threat of Tar-Baphon and his servants. Incorporating Pharasman symbology into his teachings would have grounded Aldus's message in language his audience would find comforting. The elements of Varisian occultism within Aldus's teachings served a similar purpose, providing Ustalavic nobles with images and symbols with which they were already familiar. They'd likely already seen things like star reading and harrowing on the streets of their own communities, or perhaps even within their own families. And yet, if you give Aldus the benefit of the doubt, you could make an argument that he was simply interpreting the complex teachings of Tabris, a being far beyond mortal understanding, through the lens of his own life experiences. Aldus was raised in a culture filled with Pharasman teachings, Varisian practices, and fascination with Osiriani history. Is it any wonder that he fell back upon familiar ideas as a means of interpreting occult and divine mysteries so far outside his realm of expertise? On the other hand, plenty of conspiracy theories surrounding the Order don't even attribute malevolence or selfishness to Aldus himself. Some theories claim that Aldus didn't actually meet Tabris in the deserts of Osirian. Tabris wasn't Tabris, the theories go, but was actually a devil. This fiend disguised itself, then tricked Aldus into thinking that the lessons he was learning were a path toward divine enlightenment. Under this theory, the Lost Gospels of Tabris are not a new publication, but are in fact a long-forgotten chapter of the infamous Book of the Damned. This theory is vehemently denied by the leaders of the Order today, but none will deny that diabolic imagery is used throughout their practices and beliefs. Is this whole thing made up? Is the Esoteric Order of the Palatine Eye based on a foundation of bullshit? Honestly, we'll probably never know for sure, and really, I like that better than any firm answer. The air of mystery surrounding the Order is, in my mind, only enhanced by this unresolved suspicion. And notably, just because the Order can now provide divine powers like a deity, as of divine mysteries, doesn't mean it should automatically be thought of as true. Golarion is a world powered by belief, and the long tradition of belief and practice among the Order could have easily resulted in the steady accumulation of occult power. This would then become a circular loop. Power which convinced onlookers of the legitimacy of the Order's teachings led to higher membership, which in turn gathered more occult power to the Order. Even if Aldus only ever spouted lies and half-truths, in practical terms his teachings now have a power, and therefore truth, all their own. AP Involvement. Warning, this is the section of the video I warned about at the beginning. If you want to avoid spoilers for Curse of the Crimson Throne, Carrion Crown, or Doomsday Dawn, skip ahead to the Player Information section. You have been warned. Chronologically, the first major influence which the Esoteric Order of the Palatine Eye exercised on the plot of a Pathfinder adventure path was in the background lore of the Curse of the Crimson Throne AP. About 700 years ago in universe, the desperate Count of Tamravena, an archaic name for the county of Canterwall, reached out to Zon Kuthon, the god of pain and torture, for aid against the invading orcs of Belkzen. In response, Zon Kuthon sent one of his most dangerous servants, the mercenary Kazavon. Kazavon restructured the armies of Tamravena and drove the orcs back, but then seized control of the armies for himself, betraying and killing the count. He constructed a fortress for himself called Castle Scarwall, and from there he reigned as a warlord for more than 20 years. Finally, in 4063, a knight called Mandravus rode up to challenge Kazavon's rule. Mandravus was a member of the Esoteric Order of the Palatine Eye, and gathered about him a party of warriors from all across the Inner Sea region. He had learned the awful truth. Kazavon was not, in fact, a man, but was actually a blue dragon, likely now a storm-crowned dragon, who lived in human form. Mandravus and his warriors stormed Kazavon's palace, and, after a titanic battle, slew the dragon. His body was torn apart and burned, but 6 fragments of his form proved resilient to destruction. These 6 fragments, called the Relics of Kazavon, were handed off to Mandravus's companions, who were tasked with scattering them to the far corners of the world. One of these artifacts, the Fangs of Kazavon, was stored in the depths of the Grand Mastaba in Korvosa. These cursed fangs would eventually go on to kick off the events of the Curse of the Crimson Throne AP when they were discovered by Queen Iliosa. Mandravus himself remained behind in Castle Scarwall. He was killed when the orcs of Belkzen, realizing their enemy Khazavon was dead, gathered in force and attacked Scarwall directly. Much further along in the timeline, the Esoteric Order of the Palatine Eye played a somewhat larger supporting role in the Carrion Crown adventure path. Throughout this AP, which I've summarized in my Tar-Baphon deep dive video, the player characters repeatedly came into contact with members of the Order. This starts when the heroes follow hints from Professor Petros Lorimor to the city of Lepidstadt. There, they meet with Judge Embreth Daramid, who is a member of the Order, then help her to resolve a murder mystery, which takes particular inspiration from Frankenstein. After this, the heroes make their way through the Ustalavic countryside, tracking a conspiracy by agents of the Whispering Way. This quest eventually takes the heroes to Caliphus, where they meet with several members of the Order at the Cathedral in the Hereday Theater. This puts the PCs on the trail of a vampire clan within the city, and gives them the resources necessary to finally put them on the trail of their ultimate foe, the necromancer Adressant, who was attempting to create a new Whispering Tyrant via the mysterious Carrion Crown elixir. Most recently, the Esoteric Order of the Palatine Eye played a substantial role in the Doomsday Dawn adventure for the Pathfinder playtest. During this adventure, groups of Order agents from all across the Inner Sea region undertook a series of missions to unravel the mysteries of the countdown clocks, artifacts relating to some mysterious upcoming apocalypse. After much effort, the Order pieced together the source of these artifacts, a conspiracy by the former Desnan priest, Ramlock. Ramlock sought to manipulate the alignment of the planets within Golarion's star system to force the planet Octurne to collide with Golarion, awakening it as a new outer god. The agents of the Order managed to track down Ramlock, and after a grueling fight, put a stop to his machinations once and for all. Also, the Ashen Man was there, but he's a topic for a different video. For players who might be interested in playing characters who are members of the Esoteric Order of the Palatine Eye, here are a few useful details. The Esoteric Order of the Palatine Eye is listed as a covenant in Divine Mysteries, meaning it is a collection of spiritual practices which can provide power to clerics like a deity, but which is not a singular deific force. For those using the alignment rules, the Order is a lawful neutral organization, and will accept followers of any lawful alignment. The Order's edicts are to honor the rights of the Order while pushing for change, to provide succor to scholars and truth-seekers, and to pursue the wisdom of ancient forgotten texts, such as the Lost Gospels of Tabris. Conversely, to destroy rare or ancient lore, to dismiss or remain ignorant of newly found texts, and to reveal the Order's secrets to those outside of the organization are all anathema to the Order. The Order can provide power to clerics in the form of the heal or harm fonts, in addition to the ambition, duty, knowledge, and secrecy domains, or the glyph and truth alternate domains. The Order provides no divine sanctification. The symbol of the Order is the Palatine Eye, a scarab beetle with the sign of an eye on its back underneath its wings. Please note, characters can be members of the Order while still worshipping another deity. Clerics of Pharasma, for instance, are granted access to the Order very readily, and still practice their faith. The Esoteric Order has no listed sacred colors. Followers do, however, have an extremely distinct look, at least when garbed in their official regalia. Members of the Order favor decorations and trinkets with a distinctly Osiriani flavor. These might be legitimate artifacts from ancient Osirian, but could just as easily be forgeries or replicas, which make use of Osirian-inspired imagery, such as pyramids, sphinxes, and hieroglyphs. The legitimacy of many of these quote-unquote artifacts is certainly questionable. In addition to these Osiriani items, which are largely made of gold or bronze, many Order members will drape themselves in the muted regalia of Pharasman priests. This will mostly consist of Pharasman spirals, but might also include psychopomp imagery. Beyond this, the Order dabbles in all manner of occult and divine mysteries, so mismatched signs and symbols will appear regularly among their accoutrements. They might also weave in some elements of Varisian folk traditions, with about the same level of respect for their actual history. As a shorthand to inspire your character, call to mind a Victorian gentleman's club, which focuses on, the modern study of Egyptology and its associated occult elements. Most Order members are far more interested in the aesthetics of history and occultism than they are in legitimate study. In short, they are Egypt weebs, who want to look cool. I gotta be honest, as a fantasy nerd, I can sympathize. To really drive that Victorian gentleman inspiration home, the Order's favorite weapon is the sword cane. I could also see other gentlemanly weapons like the rapier being used regularly as well. Order members who have spent time in Osirian itself might favor weapons used in that region, like the Khopesh, or more conventional weapons like an axe, which simply follow Osiriani design sensibilities. FYI, if you're looking for ideas for such weapons, check out the Mummy's Mask adventure path. If you want to lean into the Egyptologist idea from a meta perspective, you might also consider the whip, or a pair of pistols, taking inspiration from Indiana Jones and Rick O'Connell respectively. Alternatively, you could lean into the Order's association with Pharasma by choosing to wield a dagger, or one of the weapons wielded by her psychopomp servants. Order members with familiars, or animal companions, likely gravitate toward animals with an occult association. Bats, cats, and toads are some such examples. Alternatively, members might choose animals associated with Osirian, like the scorpion or the scarab beetle. I could also see Pharasma's sacred animal, the whippoorwill, being chosen frequently. Larger animals might include horses or camels for exploring the Osiriani desert, hawks or owls for scouting, or dogs, wolves, or jackals for protection. For Order members with access to more advanced familiars, a pseudosphinx or a psychopomp could serve as an exceptionally good choice. The Order might appeal to characters of any mechanical class, but the recruitment requirements, which emphasize an interest in and skill with the occult arts, lend themselves toward classes with connections to the religion and occultism skills, as well as classes which key off of intelligence and classes with additional skill increases. Looking at the martial classes first, the Investigator is the standout option. The Investigator provides plenty of skill increases, focuses on intelligence and mental skills, and is great at occultism. Divine Mysteries even provides the Palatine Detective class archetype for the Investigator. This archetype, which grants an Investigator access to some versatile spellcasting, is explicitly tied to the Esoteric Order. This is far from the only class among members, however. Plenty of rogues might associate with the Order, for most of the same reasons as the Investigator. The Mastermind rogue racket is likely the best fit, but the Avenger could work well too, especially for characters who hunt down traitors in the Order, or who work against its enemies directly. The Outwit and Vindicator Rangers could work in mostly the same capacity. The Magus, though tied to Arcana instead of occultism, would be a good fit, and back in 1st edition, the Order even had its own feats which Magus members could choose. Many members might also be alchemists or inventors, especially in the Palatinates region of northern Ustalav, where Gothic horror-style science is really taking off. Finally, the Thaumaturge is an absolute no-brainer choice for Order members, since their esoteric lore and implements are basically the mechanical representation of everything the Order believes in. Moving over to the spellcasting classes, clerics are an obvious choice. Clerics in the Order might be devoted to the Palatine Eye itself, but just as often, if not more so, might be devoted to Pharasma. Cloistered clerics are likely the most common doctrine in the Order. Witches are likely common in the Order, especially those with divine or occult patrons, like the Choir Politic, Faith's Flamekeeper, Paradox of Opposites, Spinner of Threads, Starless Shadow, Resentment, or Unseen Broker patrons. While sorcerers of any bloodline and oracles of any mystery would be welcome among the Order, the angelic, hag, harrow, and psychopomp bloodlines, and the ancestors, bones, cosmos, and lore mysteries would be the most thematic and most welcome. Animists would be welcome as well, and the Echo of Lost Moments and Imposter in Hidden Places apparitions would likely be the most useful in Order activities. Bards with the Enigma Muse would certainly be helpful to the Order as well, though the Polymath Muse would be helpful in improving the Order's image. Psychics, oddly, haven't really been mentioned in discussions on the Order, but the gathered lore and wandering reverie subconscious minds, as well as the infinite eye and silent whisper conscious minds, fit the Order's teachings best. Lastly, summoners with the angelic, anger or devotion phantom, or psychopomp eidolons could all be great fits for followers of the Palatine Eye. A number of archetypes might fit as well. The archaeologist is a fantastic pick right off the bat, since so many of the Order's field activities take place in Osirian. Similarly, the linguist and the lore master might help members broaden their knowledge base to ensure that they can grasp the many and varied secrets of the Order. The hallowed necromancer, undead slayer, or exorcist might appeal to members who specifically oppose Tar-Baphon and the Whispering Way. The eldritch researcher, or ritualist, conversely, would likely appeal to more academically minded members. Rival academies also introduced the Lepidstadt surgeon archetype, which leans into the idea of scientific healing and the creation of a Frankenstein's monster companion. Having been founded in Ustalav by a member of the nobility, and with its steep membership fees, the Esoteric Order's ranks are dominated by humans, the most numerous and ruling ancestry in Ustalav. Ustalavic humans are generally of mixed Kelid and Varisian descent, though plenty of Taldans settled in the region after the Shining Crusade. Elves and Ayuvaran might be somewhat common, as they might have emigrated from nearby Kionin, and the same could be said of the dwarves of Kragadan. Halflings are also fairly common in the region. Due to Ustalav's infusion with the undead, a number of Dhampirs might be drawn to the Order as well, as might changelings or duskwalkers. Also, there are a lot of lycanthropes in Ustalav, and specifically werewolves, so I could definitely see a number of beastkin or characters with the were-creature archetype in the Order's ranks in that region. Similarly, the Palatinates region of Ustalav is famous for new scientific developments, one of which is the manipulation of flesh with electricity. For that reason, Frankenstein-flavored flesh warps might find their way to the Order. As an off-the-wall idea, I also like the idea of an Order member who screwed up in Osirian by becoming a mummy, as expressed through either the mummy archetype or perhaps the skeleton ancestry. As an additional note, I've noticed that traditional membership in the Order leans more toward men than women. This might simply be a holdover of the narrative inspiration for the Order coming from the idea of gentleman explorer societies. Alternatively, it could reflect a degree of sexism in Ustalavic culture. The Order itself doesn't seem to have any published teachings regarding gender or sexuality, and I have found members who are women, so this might very well be an idea which Paizo is simply trying to leave behind. Members of the Esoteric Order of the Palatine Eye tend to be enthusiasts for occult secrets and ancient artifacts. They drape themselves in the symbology of Osiriani tradition and Pharasman faith, though the authenticity with which they use these ideas will vary from member to member. They use secret phrases to communicate amongst themselves and to center their minds, convinced that outside forces seek the secrets that they bear. Order members are likely highly motivated to oppose the forces of chaos and undeath, from the streets of Lepidstadt in Ustalav to the deserts of Osirian. They are fascinated with occult or religious knowledge, and are motivated to unravel the mysteries held within ancient tomes, lost artifacts, and unexplored tombs. For GMs looking to incorporate the Esoteric Order of the Palatine Eye and its members into a campaign, here are some ideas. The Order is a versatile tool for GMs, since it can easily serve as both a benevolent and antagonistic force. For instance, low-level PCs might be hired by a local village council in Ustalav to investigate the mysterious goings-on in a nearby abandoned mansion. As the PCs explore the site, they can discover a series of clues leading to cultic activity in the building. The cultists, however, are not devotees to some dark deity, but are actually Order initiates, attempting to conjure occult power with their limited knowledge of the Order's practices. The knowledge of the Order is easily put to wicked use, even by its own members. Unscrupulous members would certainly be able to use these powers in ways which would terrify or exploit the superstitious citizens of Ustalav, and low to mid-level heroes would be the ideal candidates to put a stop to such activities. At the same time, however, the Order could be an absolutely fantastic quest giver for a party of heroes. The Order has interests in a wide variety of schemes for basically all levels of play, so low-level characters might be hired by an Order agent early on in their career, then maintain their employment as they level up, taking on increasingly difficult and dangerous missions. At the low end, the Order might ask heroes to investigate local crimes near a cathedral, or to track down an Order member who has spilled secrets and must be brought in. At mid-level, the PCs might be tasked with the collection of rare artifacts, or the exploration of an abandoned Order facility to recover lost books. At high level, the Order might even entrust the PCs with tasks like rescuing a kidnapped First Throne member, taking direct action against the Whispering Way, or aiding an aging member of the Order in their journey to Osirian from Ustalav. Two adventure ideas stand out as potential high-level narratives involving the Esoteric Order of the Palatine Eye. The first is an investigative exploration of Whispering Way sites in the county of Virlich. Virlich was the seat of power of Tar-Baphon during his first return as the Whispering Tyrant, and many sites within the region remained largely unexplored since the end of the Shining Crusade. The most dangerous of these is certainly Gallowspire, the former fortress and prison which held Tar-Baphon for centuries. This structure has been detailed in the Dungeons of Golarion sourcebook from 1st edition, so there's actually a fairly comprehensive map of the structure. Of the many dark secrets within Gallowspire, the most intriguing is probably a towering black obelisk, carved with innumerable runes of power. This represented the whole of Tar-Baphon's arcane knowledge, and might have served as his spellbook. The Esoteric Order might have an interest in transcribing the ancient secrets carved into this pillar, and such a quest would be well suited to high-level or even mythic PCs. The next high-level idea relating to the Order is an exploration of ancient tombs in Osirian. The Order is extremely active in Osirian due to its fascination with Osiriani mysticism, and the history of Count Aldus Cantor's wanderings in the desert. If you haven't run Mummy's Mask at your table, you could easily rework it to have more involvement from the Order. Alternatively, you could just lift dungeon layouts from that AP and work out a new storyline. Sources of inspiration could include the old 1E sourcebooks Osirian, Land of the Pharaohs, and Osirian, Legacy of the Pharaohs. There are also a number of ancient kings and queens in Osirian's history who've been buried in tombs which have yet to be found or explored. Each of these could make for a compelling dungeon, but linking them together in an extended treasure hunt could make for a great longer adventure. Sources and additional reading. Two primary sources contributed the most to this video. Lost Omen's Divine Mysteries provides the most up-to-date information on the Order, and details the mechanics of following them as a Divine Covenant. Meanwhile, Book 2 of the Carrion Crown Adventure Path, Trial of the Beast, provides a detailed 6-page article on the Order. Many secondary sources then supplemented this primary information. Lost Omen's Gods and Magic, Lost Omen's Rival Academies, and Dark Archive all provide some information on the Order, and the NPC Core provides some ideas for how to represent them with NPC stat blocks. Going back to 1st edition, Carrion Crown Books 1 and 5 detail specific NPCs and locations relating to the Order. Pathfinder campaign setting Occult Mysteries also has a small discussion on the followers of the Palatine Eye. Doomsday Dawn, the Pathfinder playtest adventure, heavily involves the Order. Lastly, two tertiary sources provided a little bit more information on the Order, but they mostly just reiterate information already explored. The Haunted Heroes Handbook and Occult Origins. Well, that's it. That is the Esoteric Order of the Palatine Eye. They are probably the least secret society in the Inner Sea region, but they manage to somehow still be fascinating as a topic of discussion. I love how much detail they've gotten over the years, especially with the many layers of ritual, symbolism, and tradition which shroud the organization's deeper secrets. This is one of those organizations which really helps the Pathfinder setting feel distinct, since gentleman Egyptologist and occultist who also fights the undead is such a weirdly specific narrative niche. I love that they exist, and I'm glad I finally got to talk about them. This wraps up my month of exploring some of the more esoteric aspects of the Pathfinder setting. I hope you've enjoyed these more niche topics, but next month I'm getting back to the gods proper. March 2026 is Dragon Month here at Podfinder. That's right, Apsu and Dayhawk are finally getting their due. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.